that there are megalithic structures. They are those places which are more ancient than the pyramids, the Egypt pyramids. So we will now stick to what he's going to say and brief introduction. The megalithic structure in Armorica, and now comparative study between megalithism of ancient Brittany and ancient art of India. Now that was the topic. That is the topic, and he is a clinical psychologist, graduate in psychopathology from University of Rennes. Since 2006, he is also the manager of the association, which is Institute of Human Studies, Psychology, Art, Historical Research. Since more than 40 years, he is studying the megalithic tradition. The megalithism, unknown tradition, appeared 7,000 years ago, carried out by an unknown people, which appeared on the surface of Earth and later disappeared totally, forgotten by memory of humanity. The megalithic people wanted to gather scientific, artistic, and technical knowledges and express them in a big stone book, which is still there in Brittany, Armorica, in west part of France. This book is 25 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. It is written out of huge stones, standing stones, and dolmen that are referred to under the term of megalithics from the two Greek roots. Mega means big and lithos means stone. Now I will not take much time on this, but all that we can say is that he is totally dedicated for his work. And he has been visiting India every year. It is only because of the corona, the menace that he is unable to travel. Otherwise, he visits India every year and mostly in the tribal area of India. So Professor Guriak was working with his group of students from Brittany, discovered Indian tribal art for the first time in 2010 at the Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya Museum of Bhopal. He has visited many states. I think he has seen whole of India and mostly the tribal areas. So today I once again welcome him to give his presentation. Please go ahead, Professor Guriak, with your presentation.
Oh, namaste, and so sorry for this problem. I am happy to have the opportunity to be here, yes, for the second time, 5 weeks later. And for that, dear Surendra, I am very thankful to you and also to the people who organize this gathering of endangered knowledges. I am thankful to all the people who are here today to share a moment in the memory of our great ancients. Yes, today my intention is to present the megalithic monuments which had been erected by our ancients and to present the architecture of the mythical couple, one more time, 4,500 years before Christ. That means more than 1,000 years before the great pyramids of Egypt. Of course, today we shall discover these stones and engraved signs, but above all, we shall try to understand the thoughts of these people. And I want to tell that beyond the archaeological site himself, we shall try to understand how what is presented under our eyes refers to the inner spiritual life of the human being of this time. For this understanding, we shall go back and forth between Brittany and India, where we found the same sense of the mythical couple in many temples and rituals. Maintenant, comment est-ce qu'on envoie le...
Il faut que vous demandez de changer l'écran.
Non. Alors. Ça ne descend pas. La diapo suivante.
We can see the slide. We can
Okay.
see the slide. Yeah.
Okay. Huh? Okay, when we are in front of these two pictures, we can see the two symbols of a male principle on the left and a female goddess on the right. In the Indian tradition, we immediately think to the great couple Purush and Prakriti. But Purush and Prakriti are so difficult to be reduced to a definition. So we shall try to view them from the inner experience. Purush is this vertical column of vibrating energy, like a warm fire. And you know very well that Pur means fire. It is a force of consciousness coming from on high, which keeps all in harmony under his watchful eye. But Purush stays motionless. He can do nothing. He needs his consort, his Paredros Prakriti. In the Megalithic, Prakriti is a great prehistoric goddess. She is called the goddess with 1,000 shapes, but she has three main aspects and is able to do three main things. First, she is a door which opens the entry to the interior world of a temple of a man's body. Second, she has the capacity to be impregnated and to create all the shapes. On the right peak, we can see the multiple hairs of corn engraved on her stomach, so important at the beginning of the Neolithic Revolution. Third, because she is able to create, she knows the measure, and for that she has a tool, the scales. We shall try to develop these aspects in the next seminar. At present, let's come back where we stopped last time. In our first seminar, we presented the main lines of the great megalithic layout in the south of Brittany. Now let's go deeper to the details. First of all, we have to find the great vertical column of the Quiberon Peninsula oriented toward the north. Then we take a position at its base, at Manemer, at the point A. It's from that place that during his annual walk in the sky, we can see the sun rising on summer solstice at its highest, which we call sometimes the door of men. He will rise just on the hill of Armorica, point B, where is located Ergra, the big broken menhir. We have a small peak. So let's be taken by air till that place where we have to go to understand the architectural principles of the mythical couple. Sorry. A problem in the flight, no problem. So let's be taken by air till that place where we have to go to understand the architectural principles of the mythical couple. Then we shall return to India to discover the same ideas. Here we are. Such was the place in 1976 when we began our study of the megalithic tradition and where we shall find the two main elements of the couple. Agra is the big menhir, which was erected at the megalithic period, of course, and is now broken. And the goddess is inside the dolmen under tumulus. She is called Table des Marchands, completely abandoned and forgotten by the memory of mankind. Let's learn now an approach to the place. Here is the great broken menhir called Ergra. It is made of granite. It is 23 meters long. Yes, 23 meters long. Around 17 meters out of the ground. For a weight of around 350 tons. And in accordance with the archaeologists, based on the granulometry of the granite, it has been moved on 16 kilometers. Can you imagine 7,000 years ago? More, it has been completely polite because there is an engraved sign, raised sign, on one of its sides. See the picture, it's the sign of the balance engraved on the side of Agra. And it seems that it has been broken by the stupidity of men. In front of this amazing and incredible work, there are two questions. How and why? We have chosen to favor the second. And here is the dolmen of La Table des Marchands. On the left of the peak, you can see the entry side of the corridor of the dolmen. And at the bottom, it's a sandstone with the engraved goddess, which peak is on the right. This is a peak coming from Mr. Zachary Lerozic in 1927. You can see the measurement and the hairs of corn, and also you can maybe see a small sun at the middle of the stomach of this picture. To discover how the space of the architecture of the megalithic couple has been built, we have to give some particularities of the megalitician thought. And about the megalithic thought, let me tell a little story. I was just finishing my degree course of psychology, and I was very proud to have got so many knowledges, to become very intelligent. And it was obvious for me that all what we could understand was only coming from the human thinking. But I remember very well the day when my master, Mrs. Hélène Fleury, by her oral and direct explanation and the vibrations of her presence, indicated me how to understand the thoughts of the ancients. On the peak, we can see Mrs. Fleury and myself in 1989 at Rosnowen, close to Brest in Brittany, where the Institute of Human Studies is. This understanding of the megalithic thought has been such a big shock for me. So, let me share with you and discover this thought, which process is so different from the modern thinking, especially in the West. Above all, the megalithician was an observer. And because this word has lost its original meaning, let's turn our attention to it for a moment to understand what to observe is. To observe is made up of two roots, which are ob, which means roundabout, and serve, which means to serve, but with a special idea of to protect, also coming from the Sanskrit root varuta, which means protector, keeper, but to keep under his own watchful eye. The people who practice the meditation based on the right distribution of the attention will understand. We can easily imagine that the Megalithic man, when he changed from the nomadic status to the sedentary status, he had to organize his life according to cosmic laws, which he had to observe and to inscribe on the ground. Later, when the megalithic school opened, the students came to learn to this place where they could find a program set up by the masters. And as we said, this program could be revealed by observations, and observations thousands times. On the central peak, you can see that for traditional people, the first gesture of each morning day is the observation of the sunrise and its special ritual. This woman is worshipping by giving offerings to her Tulsi, which is like a god. In front of the sunrise, we can see on the peak along the holy river of Narmada at Maheshwar in MP. Now, let us see what was the result of these observations. First, observation of the sun. For the help of comprehension, let us suppose that our first day of observation, the student, who is not only in a mood for counting, also wants to participate. So, he is kneeling, calm, staying still, and outside he feels the same atmosphere. The first day, the sun rises in the direction of the point E. 2 days after, he will come back, and we'll see the sun rising just a bit upper, and so on, day after day, during around 90 days. Of course, the atmosphere also becomes different. The days are getting longer, becoming warmer, the plants grow, and suddenly, one morning, the sun rise seems to stop. It's point F. The day after, the sunrise will happen till the lower down, crossing the point E, the days growing shorter, the plants begin to fade, the daytime is less long, the weather may be very cold. This movement will last around 180 days, till one morning during which the sun movement seems to stop to go down. It's point G. This particular moment, when the sun is about to die, and when you know very well he will be born, has been particularly celebrated in the spiritual world. In the Christianism, the Christmas day originates in it, because in French this day is called Noël, which does not come from Natalis, as people say, but come from a Gallic root, Noyoel, meaning new sun. Determining of the equinoctial east point, let's come back to the observation of Armorica. From the point G, where we stop our observation, the rising sun will come back up and will continue for around 90 days. And one day, the students will find back his first observation day, point E, you remember. This rise will be very important for two reasons. First, it will establish the east point. Second, it will mark the end of a full solar cycle and give the revelation of the number. The knowledge of the number is at the root of all knowledge, either nowadays, either in all the main ancient civilizations. How the number has been revealed. During their observations, day after day, the students put sticks in front of each sunrise, and after a whole cycle, they will count the numbers of sticks corresponding to the number of sunrises in a whole cycle. And today, you know very well, they will find 365. This number appears as the result of the thoughts of a megalithician who is serving the movement of the sun, discovering the law of creation which is inscribed in it. And this is probably the origin of the 360 degrees of a geometrical circle which we use every day nowadays. And later we shall explain what about the 5 missing days. After the daytime, when the sun sets, the students begin to see this big sky with so much celestial bodies. He suddenly feels dizzy. All the comforting markers have disappeared. Like in himself, maybe the darkness seems so anarchic, so harrowing. Is there a special organization of all that? After some time, some very fine observation, we can imagine that he felt an immense sense of relief when suddenly he discovers a fixed point in the sky. All the celestial bodies are turning around this point. It is the polar star, which will give him the north point and awake him to the inner feeling of the verticality. Birth of geometry. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a marqué après? Ah, on Pythagoras triangle. The student has now his 2 mains of the orientation, which will introduce him to the knowledge of the horizontality, east-west, and to the verticality, south-north. But these observations will bring a new incredible information. Because the result of his observation will permit him to draw on the ground a very special triangle, which we can say a triangle which has a whole number of unities of on each of its sides. That is not for all the triangles, of course. So 3 unities on the vertical side, symbol of the invisible heaven, which we can find in the India Trimurti on the peak on the left. In the Celtic Triban is a very important symbol and means 3 rays, maybe like 3 primordial forces, 3 gunas, and so on. And of course, the well-known Triskele. And on the horizontal side, there are 4 unities, and this is the symbol of the apparent world of the Earth and its 4 directions. And third, 5 unities on the hypotenuse. And what about the hypotenuse? It will make the link between the earth and the heaven. And for that, it is the symbol of the man. You can see the picture on the right. It's called the Vitruvian man, and it's the symbol of the number 5. And Vitruvius was a very great architect, telling that architecture is an imitation of the nature. This triangle 3, 4, 5 is known as the triangle of Pythagoras, but Pythagoras born around 580 years before Christ. That means almost 4,000 years after the birth of the megalithicism, and that shows how much the knowledge of megalithic people were forgotten. This triangle 3, 4, 5 is also sometimes called triangle of Osiris. The side 3 is for Osiris. It's one more time an image of the vertical principle, the Purush, also associated with Shiva in India and Dionysus in Greece. Osiris, Shiva, and Dionysus are the same. And the side 4 is for Isis. She is the wife of Osiris. The Prakriti, able to procreate, as we explained previously. And of course, the side 5 is associated with the product of their union, their son, the Greek god Horus. Plutarch, 46 to 125 AD, was a Neoplatonist philosopher and a great thinker of the ancient Rome. He went in Egypt, meeting the priest, and became, after that, a priest of Apollo at Delphi Temple and participated to the mysteries of heresy. He told about this triangle. We can speculate that the triangle 3, 4, 5 is the most beautiful triangle. We have to say now that if the Pythagoras triangle is well known and used for building construction all over the world, its capacity to be marked out on the ground by the direct observation of the sun's movement is only possible at a special latitude. Let's have an upper look on our Mother Earth. Something we cannot imagine could be possible to our ancestors, but nevertheless. At the equator, the latitude is 0 degrees, of course. At the pole, it is 90 degrees. And there is a special latitude where the sun rises at the summer solstice at east 36 degrees north, which is the small angle of the Pythagoras triangle. You can see on the peak A. This place where this happens is at the latitude of 47 degrees, you can see on the Earth, and go exactly through Brittany. Of course, not only Brittany, all around the Earth. Now, we also have to say that the measurement of the Earth at this latitude of 47 degrees north is 26.800 kilometers. And this measure will give the base of the cubit all over the world. This cubit is known to be between 26 and 27 centimeters. In the megalithism, this cubit is 26.8 centimeters. We shall see soon its application in the architecture. And like the ancient architect told that the man is a measure of everything, we can see on the arm of a man that the measurement of the arm is 26.8 centimeters. You can measure by yourself. Yes, it seems that 7,000 years ago, Megalithic people knew the measurement of the arm. Discover, tu pourrais pas m'emmener la petite barre verte. Ah voilà, c'est bon. Un peu. Let us discover some Indian places where we observe cubit of 26.8 centimeters. First, we shall go to Lothal. It's in Gujarat, and Lothal is known as a city built during the Harappan civilization with bricks. We measure all of them, and the length is 26.8 centimeters. The wide is half cubit, and the height is a quarter of cubit. Also, in a temple of Budisha in MP, we could measure a Buddha's foot which measure half cubit, 13.4 centimeters. The impressive garden of Shalimar in Kashmir has a length of 539 meters. It's almost 2 times the cubit. According to this writer, Mr. C.N. Villiers Stewart, in his book Gardens of the Great Moguls, written in 1913. At the bottom of a tribal temple in a small village called Matnar in Chhattisgarh, the Danteshwari goddess is included in a geometric shape in a triangle whose base measures 1 meter 7 centimeters. That means 4 cubits. Within a few steps of this temple of Matnar, we also find an ovoid structure of 2 meters 68 diameter. Alors, je n'ai pas le titre encore.
Let's enter into the corridor. How is the temple?
Tu me le montres, oui. Non. Alors, peut-être, mais vous le voyez, c'est pas grave. Oui. So let's enter now into the holy dance of an outdoor temple. For that, it's time to come back to the place of the mythical thought. We begin to understand how the megalithicians masters set up the architecture of the myth according to the big movement and annual dance of the living sun, and the students received their spiritual instruction by their participation to the movement. But because our modern mental thought wanders from the thought of our ancients, we want to warn against a simple materialistic understanding. What the megalithicians wanted to put under our eyes is only an image of what can be found inside ourselves, not only by a soft practice of yoga, but by becoming a yogi, as told the famous Indian guru during the last Maha Shivaratri at the beginning of this month. We can also listen the informed advices of the great Indianist Alain Danielou, which work in Benares. The thought of our ancestors can be found in the Indian tantras and in the multi-millennial experience of the Shivaite India concerning the nature of cosmos and its links with the subtle structure of the human being. Same idea. Ah non, je ne peux pas, il y a encore trop de choses. Oh, montre-moi l'écran. Non.
Là-haut,
Ici.
je sais pas si c'était
Oui. Là, c'est bon.
Ouais, mais du coup, je vois le.
Okay, sorry for the problem. Now, let's put into the practice of what we learn. The observer is at the foot of the huge standing stones, point H. The name of the menhir is Ergra. It's a Breton name, meaning something like fairy. Yes, it's a female name, because this menhir is firstly turned towards the heaven, ready to receive. It will become the male principle only when it will turn towards his goddess. We find the same idea with the Vedas, who are female, because they receive the knowledge from on high. And we find the same with the shamans of Basta, you can see on the right pic, who are dressed with woman clothes, because they also receive the energy which will help the villager from high. Let's come back. This early morning, the student is there. You can easily imagine the impression that this stone column as high as a building of 6 stairs turned toward the heaven got to him, probably helping to feed energies flowing along his arms at the column. And today is the summer solstice. Since several days, the student has observed that the sun is reaching its highest point. See on the door. It's in this direction that the angle stone of the corridor will be put, this corridor inside which the Greek goddess is. Now, because observation does not consist of taking 3 or 4 pictures and to put them in an album, but requests an unquenchable attention of every moment, after the summer solstice, the student will go every morning, day after day, in front of this sunrise at summer solstice, and this during 6 months, as we explained previous. And at the sunrise of the winter solstice, point S, you will have the surprise to observe that the sun ray will penetrate in the corridor of the dolmen, which is facing this direction, meeting the stone where the goddess is, and will symbolically be impregnated. We can see the 2 pictures, which we took in 1978. It's the first time we show this picture. We can see the sun ray, which penetrate into the darkness of the corridor. We can see also how this monument was abandoned, and the sun ray will continue his way inside the corridor and come to illuminate the goddess. I want to say that the best knowledge of the goddess and what happened after the impregnation will be explained also in the next seminar. On this same day, of the 21st December, the students will be particularly vigilant because the sun is at its lowest height of the year, but at midday will reach its upper point in the direction of the point A. This moment is very special because the sun will deliver a shadow, point B. The linear measure of this shadow is 53.6 meters. You can see on the lower peak, C is 53.6 meters. That means 2 cubits. And it's this measure which will permit to locate exactly the entry of the corridor of the dolmen, about which, till now, you remember, we only had the orientation given by the sunrise at summer solstice. And this idea, here is the unity of the mythical couple. The goddess is linked to its principle by the shadow given by the sun. We can see on the peak that around Avra is a virgin circular area, into which we find only the foot of a new structure, which will also develop in the next seminar. This area was delimited by remains of littorals. The other cubit measurement of 26.8 meters is the one of the tumulus in which the dolmen of la Table des Marchands is. Another information, it's the determination of the theoretical height of Agora. Not to be lost on this peak, we have to see the position of the sun at midday of the 21st December. If we remember the previous peak, we can see that it will give a shadow which length is 53.6. And we have done many measurements and discovered that in 4500 BC, this shadow was 53.55 meters, given the height of a menhir of 17.41 meters. You can see that the shadow is going till the entry of the corridor. We just explained this. And the angle is 18 degrees. We can say now that this is the origin of the Greek pediment. We shall continue. In the central peak, we can see the man has a measure of everything. On this bas-relief, under the watchful of the sun, we can imagine that the head is like the menhir, is the thought in the head, the principle which will display by the action in the hands. That means the Prakriti is a goddess. And to finish, the geometry of the Greek pediment. We can imagine a circle with a radius r, which will develop its circumference of a base AB. If this circle is placed just below on the middle of the straight line AB, the figure AOB will give the Greek pediment, which we can see on the peak on the right part. If we associate the radius OH with ergra and AH with the shadow, the height of the menhir will be close to 17.40 meters. All that to mark how important all is coming from the sun and nothing is coming directly from the thinking of the man. Now, in front of this megalithic couple made of the huge stone column of Ergra and of the goddess in her ovoid tumulus, we can also listen to the Rig Veda and to the Atharva Veda, in which the cosmic pillar is called the Skamba. The Skamba is the image of the uniqueness of the upper principle that the Brahman is, and that Indian people know very well than me. It is explained that the creation born from this germ, the golden embryo, and has been measured by Skamba, the cosmic pillar, by the shadow given by the sun. Him to which the gods bring an unlimited tribute in a limited space. This Skamba, tell me, who is he then? When we came in India for the first times, we discovered the same analogical but still living symbol, and were so astonished to see such an important symbol everywhere, in each temple, some ones living with beautiful rituals, some ones abandoned. It is the Shivalingua. The lingua is worshipped under the shape of an erected stone, Silaja. Excuse for the pronunciation if I make a mistake. Or like an anthropomorphic god, and it is represented hemmed in the yoni, the female part. We can see here in a temple of Rajasthan, not far from Bundi, the Shivalingua, where the lingua is represented by an anthropomorphic menhir. Before visiting those places of this piece of apparatus, let's tell some words about the lingua, as we can read in the Lingua Pirana, chapter 1, no, first part, chapter 75. It is written, the lingua is an outside sign, a symbol. However, we have to consider that the lingua is of two sorts, exterior or interior. The coarse organ is exterior. The subtle organ is interior. Simple people worship the exterior organ. The image of phallus is to awake the faithful to the knowledge. The immaterial lingua is not perceptible to people who are only able to see the exterior things. And we had that it is also imperceptible for people who have only a mental approach. The subtle and eternal lingua is only perceptible to the one who got in touch with the knowledge. And in the Shiva Purana, Rudra Samhita, first part, chapter 12, we can also read, the ones who practice ritual sacrifice and worship physical lingua are not able to control their mental activities by meditating on subtle. The ones who are not still aware of mental sex, of subtle sex, have to worship physical sex and not the contrary. Same idea exactly that in Megalithic Thought, in my opinion. Now, let us visit some Shivalingua of India. Here is a small Shiva temple in the middle of the Narmada River at Maheshwar. On the right peak, the Brahmin are meditating before enter the temple. Then they will practice different rituals around the lingua, on which they will pour milk, symbol of the celestial energy coming from the gods. Can we say from the Milky Way? Here is a great temple of Omkareshwar. Picture 1, during the night and also during the Diwali festival. People put candles on the holy Namada, trying to draw the home symbol of the river. The Shiva Temple of Omkareshwar is famous because he has one of the 12 Jyotirlingua of India, and we can see the stones on the peak number 2. We have been lucky because there were so many people to observe the offering of a Brahman under the so concentrated eye of the temple's keeper. We were very touched by this image. Another lingua with the face of Shiva with the third eye. This is coming from the cave number 4 at Daiguri in MP. And on the right peak, in front of the Bojeshwar Shivalingua of Bhojpur, one of the biggest of India, 18 feet tall and 7.8 feet circumference, with students of the Institute of Human Studies doing field work in India. The notion of couple is felt everywhere in India, as well in social as spiritual life. Let's give some examples. First, in the Hindu wedding. The most well-known is the importance of the wedding. Of course, we shall not going on this well-known subject. We just wish to mention the thought of our friend Sanakepa from Karnataka, maybe especially for West people. In India, we do not marry because we love each other. We marry to learn how to love each other. Qu'est-ce qu'elle a dit?
Qu'il était animateur.
Tribal wedding. We have been very interested by this painting, which is produced by the Pils, the tribe of the Indian Janjati society. This word Janjati have been given me by Professor Kutela, which is with us today. The painting represents a range of vertical lines, which alternate yellow and white dots. Each yellow and white spot symbolizes a couple of human beings from past generations. In the middle of the painting is another couple on a bigger scale, represented by two animals linked by a necklace of strands of wool. We were told that this ritual painting represents a series of descendants coming from a common ancestor in a common caste. That is the meaning of the word Janjati. This painting has been done in a family of Bandu belonging to a Bil tribe on the occasion of a marriage. After the marriage, a few months later, a child will be born, a new link in the lineage. This painting reminds ourselves that the time for a child to come is also the time for a new link in the humanity, what we sometimes call in West Adamite, and that we are all coming from a common couple of ancestors. We also have been interested by some daily life in tradition and animist practice. The right peak shows a shelter for harvest and animals. Its shape represents a couple with his right part and his flagpole, male symbol, and its left part, which is female symbol. We can find the same idea and shape in the Christian churches with the steeple and the nave. And below, we can see these two small pieces of wood, details on the right in a tribal village of Chhattisgarh. The tribals explained that they were missing of rain, and they put these two pieces so that by getting closer and closer, they will favorite the coming of rain for culture. This is an animist thought, but I think is very close from the idea of megalithic thought. And we also find a marriage of two megaliths. And to finish, we want to show this example of the importance of the remembrance of the mythical couples in their tribals. A few years ago, 10 years to tell the truth, we were searching megalithic places in Chhattisgarh, and we discovered a very important, but so damaged. The government agreed the construction of an hotel, which we can see at the bottom of the left peak. This hotel had never been finished, but it was built on the megalithic place. During the evening, we gave an outdoors lecture to the people and the children of the main village, located at 1 kilometer from this megalithic place, because we wanted to explain the importance of the megalithism. A few days later, we were invited to be the guest of honor and to participate to a ritual of the wedding of two megaliths they decided to do. Of course, we came. They decided to do this ritual because of some problems in the village. The ritual consisted to do a marriage of two small megaliths, which we can see on the picture number 1, located between the megalithic place we saw previously and the village. They told us the ritual has not been done again since 200 years. And during several days, they prepared the holy place around the megaliths. And just when we arrived, a couple of ancients of the village presented these two triads of 3 pieces of quartz which were hidden somewhere, we could never know where, and which would now receive and keep the memory and the influence of the new ritual. So right pick number 2. Then they look for a shaman, a woman, to perform the ritual on the pick number 3. This woman lived a bit far from the village, and a few days later we went to meet her in her house. She explained that she was a non-educated, but she had some special power which allowed her to be linked with the gods, with special energy, like a shaman, of course, and to feel the health problem of the people. During the ritual, the wedding is celebrated by different kinds of offers and a very precise and rigorous protocol. We can see on the right picture, she made a hole in the ground in which they put fire, and she had 7 different kinds of wood to give a special smokes for the god, I suppose. At the moment also, the shaman will introduce the granddaughters of the couple we saw previous to participate to the ritual and also to teach the new generation to the importance of this knowledge. After that, the color thread will marry the 2 megalithic gods, the bigger one being the goddess, point A, and the phallic shaped one B is the principal. We came several times to visit the people of this village and the megalithic place. We saw that the construction of the hotel was abandoned, but the villager had already begun to build houses on the megalithic place, destroying the memories. We found that, strangely, several children died by accidents. I remember 8 children. And if they decided to continue their buildings, they changed their opinions about the stones, which they try to respect for their best. We can see on the picture in the yard, the megaliths who are not disappeared, just fall down. You can see a small girl in a gesture of respect of the megalith, and under a small temple with a Shivalingua and a couple of megaliths. That is incredible. So we shall finish. Here are some aspects of the importance directly felt or with the main sense forgotten by the nowadays mankind. Shall we find back this sense? Now we think that this approach is dense and it's better to do a break. We shall meet in the end of the month of April, and we will try to understand the continuity of the holy space around the mythical couple. And because we came by flight, let us take off and take a look above the incredible work of the peninsula of Armorica, in the middle of which we can see the menhir Ever, and just close, the small white point is the goddess. Voilà, maintenant on fait quoi?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Can you close your PowerPoint? People may have questions to ask you. So thank you very much. Thank you so much for this wonderful lecture. It is taking a little time for people to understand because it's the first time they're listening to you, and slowly they will get used to the importance of these megalithic structures, which are so important. Our ancestors have built these megalithic structures thousands of years back, and most of them are over 7,000 years old. And not only that, you can imagine if they were built 7,000 years old, then when did they achieve this knowledge? Must have taken millions of years, billions of years. I do not know. I cannot comment on that. But so we can say that the knowledge is also thousands and thousands years old, and they have put things on ground more like an observatory and related to the religion and gods and goddesses. Now, anyone having any question, please raise your hand. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Anyone having question, please raise your hand. Mr. Vivek Garg, he has raised his hand. Mr. Vivek Garg, please ask your question.
Madhuji, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Here Vivek from Ujjain. I just want to introduce you that in your writing, when you have given the introduction of the sir, you have written that he looks the island just like the Ujjain of India. So what kind of the correlation he used to see in that? I just want to ask.
Well, that was the brief write-up I gave, and I think I will talk to you on that later. But let us restrict to about his lecture today. We will talk to you about the Ujjain linking the sun observatories. We will talk about it later. I think you have any other question you can ask.
Not at such right now. I will write later.
Okay. And so we have Mr. Yashwant Kumar Gupta.
No, I want to tell something.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, about Ujjain. I will talk about Ujjain next time, because Ujjain is at a latitude of 23 degrees, and 23 degrees is the angle of the second Pythagoras triangle, which is 5, 12, 13. The one we discussed is 3, 4, 5, but there is a second triangle, very, very important, but we shall explain next time.
Thank you. Okay. We now have Yashwant Kumar Gupta. Please ask your question.
Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir. My question is that language reflect our resolve to do the things which we want to do. And when we use the word myth about the knowledge and belief of our ancestors, so that word does not take out the resolve from ourselves to get connected with the knowledge and belief of our ancestors.
I'm sorry, I cannot understand the question.
यशवंत जी, आप जरा सा बहुत छोटे और सिंपल भाषा में बताएं तो अच्छा है.
Okay, sir. I am saying, if we are using the word myth about the knowledge and belief of our ancestors, so this word does not take out the spirit out of that, the knowledge and belief of our ancestors.
You want to know if our ancestor had the knowledge of the matter? Yes, of course. They use the matter and they use the qubit. Both. No.
Sir, may I make a request? May I ask a question, sir?
Yeah, please.
From the speaker, I wish to understand the psychological, socio-psychological background of these monolithic structures, plus aesthetic value system, because he has shown so many pictures and so many diagrams. So how should one evaluate and understand the whole aesthetic values and socio-psychological pattern or design of these people?
Mm.
Thanks.
Yes, I try to explain that this is mathematically is absolutely correct, but all this is not coming from the human thinking. This is coming from the observation of the celestial bodies, especially the sun we discussed, but also the polar star, but also the moon. And in our opinion, all the knowledge, especially the number, is included in the observation of this moment. In our opinion, is like the creator put all in under our eyes, but we have forgotten to read what is under our eyes. And second, for people who practice special meditation, especially when I talk about the grid menhir, which is like the vertebral column of man, he can receive a special energy. And I think like the big riches, ancient riches of India, these people has a direct knowledge of all that. And the diagram only put under our eyes what is inside us. This is my opinion.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we need, especially person like me, need to understand more about the thinking pattern of these people. Obviously, you started with the philosophical foundations of these structures and their patterns, all those things. But I think that will help me to understand more about these ancient structures. If you just give briefly an account of what was the thinking pattern of these. How should I conclude this? If I have to introduce this subject to someone else, so how should I tell them this is the thinking pattern of these people, and this is how it has been manifested in this form? Because every time we cannot start with the philosophical foundations. I mean, that is very higher state of ideas. So we should start with the basic, sometimes very basic things.
But
How the psychology and sociology operates, something like that. If you can very briefly just make a comment on that.
But for instance, if you want to explain to a student why geometry means the measurement of the heart, because geo is the heart and metry is measurement. And when you teach geometry, what will you explain to the student? What is name? Where is his name geometry coming from? But when nowadays we do geometry, nobody is thinking that geometry is measurement of the heart, and it's the name of geometry. Because we have forgotten the origin of geometry.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any more questions, please? Any more questions? So your lecture was very enlightening. But since people are listening to you for the first time, everyone has a different perspective and understanding. Unless there is one-to-one meet, I think we'll ask them to Ashutosh ji to invite you to Haryana and give a lecture. And the way you explain to the students of history at Jaipur University, the Rajasthan University, they are very inquisitive to know each and every aspect of the geometrical aspect. At the same time, spiritual. The spiritual is linked automatically, for the geometrical aspect, I think Ashutosh ji will invite you as soon as
Certainly,
this.
sir. Ji,
So,
certainly, sir.
and
That will be
then
an honor for us.
yes, and then they will start realizing how important. Of course, they all know because he himself is a professor of history, and that's why he's liking this subject, because he's a very knowledgeable person. And then I remember it took me 3-4 sessions to understand. It took me 2-3. When I heard you 3-4 times, I started understanding. It's not so easy. So it's a very, very interesting and very important subject to understand. And he, being a professor of history, he will like to go into the depth of the subject. So we will request him to invite you when you're visiting India next time.
I will.
Ji,
So
ji.
thank you very
Yep.
much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Ashutosh ji, thank you very much. Any more questions, please? Any more questions? If not, then we'll end the session now. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and especially Professor Guriak, who have taken so much of time. And this was his second lecture. We'll have more lectures from him. Maybe next month. A day has been given by him to us. We'll have more lectures, and slowly we will try to understand more in depth. Very interesting topic. Very, very interesting topic. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.